Hello girly pops and welcome back to another episode of Time for Therapy. I'm your host Brooke Matheson. I'm also the founder of Nourish Her, which is an integrative counselling coaching space where I cover everything from nutrition to training to mental health and mindset. And in today's episode we are going to be talking and discovering what distorted eating actually is. Something that has become very apparent to me over the last month is that not a lot of females actually know what distorted eating is, what distorted eating could look like, and when you need help if you are suffering from distorted eating. And I've been interviewed on 2 podcasts in the last month, and the common questions that continually come up is what is distorted eating and how do you help females through it. So that's what I'm going to be covering in today's episode, because when I was struggling with distorted eating, I didn't know that that was a thing that existed, because I thought you either just struggled with food or you had an eating disorder. However, I definitely had and presented extremely high in distorted eating, and so this is when I wish I had the terminology and education around what it was, because then I would have had and been aware of what I was navigating and been able to reach out for the help that I actually needed back then as well. So what actually is distorted eating and how can it sound like is going to be the title of today's episode. Distorted eating is typically something that runs your whole entire day. So a normal day of distorted eating can actually feel like when you wake up, you don't want to have a pre-workout snack because you know that you can get through your training session without one and you may as well save the calories. Then when you go to your training session, you have a coffee straight afterwards because you want to push out your breakfast because you've done a really good training session and you've burnt off majority of the calories that you're going to eat that day. Then you feel like you are going to stay in control of your eating that day if you push your food back as late as possible. By mid-morning, you're hungry because you've had a really small breakfast and you feel like you shouldn't be hungry again. So you're asking yourself, why am I still hungry? Seriously, what is wrong with me? I'm just going to have another coffee or have 6 glasses of water to make sure that I'm feeling satisfied and full, so I don't need to eat before lunch. Then you get to lunch and you have a salad, but you make sure that you get no dressing. Maybe you just use tuna. That's going to be your low calorie, low fat source of protein. You don't use a wrap. You literally just use spinach, tomatoes, the tuna, and that's it. No avocado. You don't need the fat. And then you were judging other people on lunchtime because they ordered the fries, they ordered the burger, they got GYG delivered, and you're wondering how they're not gaining weight and how they're not feeling guilty about eating that food when you were here sitting with your salad and your tuna. Then you have the afternoon crash where it gets to 3 p.m. You absolutely have no energy because you've restricted your calories so low throughout the day. You feel like if you want to crave something sweet and you eat that something sweet, then you've ruined your whole day and you have to start over again tomorrow. So you really try to push through and not to eat something sweet at that 3 p.m. craving. Then you get to dinner and you say, okay, you've been good all day, Brooke. Now you can deserve to have something sweet. So after dinner, you have a little sweet treat and then you go absolutely ham. Your hand is finishing the bottom of the packet of the M&Ms that you took out of the cupboard, and you feel like now tomorrow you need to start again. You need to be stricter, you need to be harder on yourselves, you need to reduce more carbs, reduce more fats, and this is when the cycle never ends, right? So this could just be a day and how you actually feel when you do have some present form of distorted eating or emotional or even just body dissatisfaction. It doesn't necessarily have to be distorted eating as well, but it can be so exhausting to live in a mindset where you are constantly focusing on food. And food focus is actually a thing. So food focus is actually the constant mental preoccupation with food. So you always think about what you should be eating, what's your next meal, when you should be eating, if you should or shouldn't be eating that thing, what you've already eaten, and how to control your food for the rest of the day. And again, these things don't have to feel extreme for you. They could just come up and you don't even realize. A lot of people aren't aware that they're having these thoughts, and these thoughts aren't natural and common for people to be having, because how are you meant to know what thought is natural or what thought you should be having if you have never experienced anything else or you can't remember thinking or living any other way? And everyone in your friendship group experiences the same thing. It can be really hard to pick up on these things. So hopefully with me just rambling today, just bringing up like food focus and stuff like that, you can kind of navigate and see what you are struggling with and where you can kind of start to help yourself and be aware of what's going on with your mindset. But food focus is usually from like a survival response. So if you feel like you are restricting your calories and your body's not getting enough calories throughout the day, then your body starts to stress that you're going to need food and you need to find food fast because your body can't live without food, right? So this is when we constantly start to food focus, and you'll hear like with bodybuilders and people that are doing diets, they're just constantly thinking about their next meal because they're constantly hungry, right? So again, usually comes from under eating or mental restriction or from like a binge and restrict cycle or just ignoring your hunger cues in general. Full circle back from food focus back to distorted eating. So food focus is obviously a part of distorted eating, but if we name distorted eating properly, it's a pattern of harmful thoughts, beliefs, and behaviors around food, weight, and body image, even if they don't meet the criteria of an eating disorder, right? So if you're meeting the criteria of an eating disorder, then I unfortunately would not be working with you. I would be referring you on to a psychologist, but I work with people with distorted eating where these behaviors and habits that they constantly do, or the way that they constantly feel about themselves on a daily basis, is being detrimental to their lifestyle or to their health. They're the people that I help, and we try to catch it again before it gets to that point of an eating disorder, right? And I'm so lucky that I had the support around me and figured out what was going on earlier when I was going through distorted eating years ago, because if I was never aware of it, then yes, potentially I could have gone down a bigger rabbit hole. But I was very lucky to catch myself at a point where I knew something was wrong, losing my menstrual cycle, and that was a huge wake-up call for me. So this is my biggest mission with Nourish Her, is helping females recognize and be aware and understand when something needs to change. If you're having these constant exhausting thoughts every single day, then this is distorted something, whether it's distorted image like body dysmorphia, or whether it's just body dissatisfaction, or if it is something with your distorted eating. Sometimes it could just be one thought that's constant for you. That's the one thought that we just have to overcome. Other people, there could be 10 to 20 to hundreds of thoughts per day that we need to overcome. So the extensiveness of coaching and helping people is going to be a huge spectrum. But again, this is why I'm so passionate about what I do. Okay, now when we look at some terminology that we use for distorted eating, number one is cognitive restraint. So this is where we make up mental rules within ourselves that we have to live by for our diet. So one of these could be you're not allowed to eat before a certain time or after a certain time. You're only allowed a cheat day or an off meal or going out for dinner on the weekend. It could be you're only allowed an X amount of oats in the morning. You're never allowed to go over. It could mean that you're only allowed to consume dessert if you've gone for a walk or to the gym that day. So these are all rules that we convince ourselves as to why we have earned or allowed to eat. Then we have body surveillance. So this is just when we are constantly body checking. Body checking really does come hand in hand with body dysmorphia or body dissatisfaction. So if you're constantly checking the mirror every single time that you walk past, readjusting your clothes, readjusting how you look, changing your outfit because you don't feel comfortable, this is kind of just body surveillance. You're really just keeping check of how your body looks and trying to hold it to a certain standard. And again, body dissatisfaction goes really hand in hand with eating. With distorted eating, because as soon as we don't feel great about our body, we have body dissatisfaction, we want to go into a deficit, and this is when our binge research cycle can really come into effect. Then we have stuff like all or nothing thinking, so you're either perfect or you're worthless around your food. Then we also have behaviors where you either need to skip meals or you need to train extra depending on what you have done, whether you have trained or haven't trained. So these are like compensating for what you have or haven't done throughout the day. Now, these are all just different random terms, and there's a whole other bunch of different terms that we use with distorted eating as well, but these are the common ones that I see every single time a new client comes to me. Now, disordered eating can come from a range of different things, right? But the biggest one that I usually see is due to some form of control, and at the end of the day, it usually comes down to control, because you're trying to control your weight so you can be lovable. That's what you believe right now. But it can also come down to the way that you manage your emotions is through food. It could also come down to, again, your body image is tied to a certain self-worth, so you need to weigh a certain amount on the scales to be lovable, to be worthy. It could literally just come down from diet culture, from social media, and what you have been taught and the rules that you have taught yourself to live by. And social media is a huge culprit for that, because there's so many influencers out there telling you that you should or shouldn't eat this. We should be avoiding seed oils. We should be eating avocado. We shouldn't be eating avocado. We should be like, there is so many conflicting messages online at the moment that it's really hard to teach yourself what actually is going to be best for you and your body. So diet culture is huge, which really reinforces the fear around food and weight gain. Now, personally for myself, I think distorted eating did come down to a control of being lovable. I really thought that if I held a certain body weight, I would be loved, I would be held, and I would be worthy of making sure that everyone around me supported me in what I was doing. However, that was so far from the truth. I think I've talked about this on another podcast, is I didn't find my relationship 5 years later from my past relationship, when I actually healed my relationship with food, and when I've nearly been the heaviest that I've ever been, right? I'm only like 5 kgs lighter than the heaviest I've ever been. And Not to say that being that heavy was a bad thing, but I definitely am confident in myself now. I'm confident in my relationship with my food, and that's when I found love with my partner. So it definitely is a huge testament to being your smallest and skinniest is not going to equal your self-worth or being lovable. Now, so many people try to heal their distorted eating with more rules. They say, okay, well, let's just add another rule, and let's just say we have to do this to heal ourselves, but it's actually about taking the rules away, which sounds reversed, right? Sounds a bit weird, but we do not heal distorted eating through more rules. You heal it through more safety and softness and support, okay? So with some different tools that I use with a lot of my clients, number one would be awareness without judgment. So first of all, just bringing awareness to the fact that you were having these thoughts. What is happening due to these thoughts? Just getting curious over the control that you do have around your body image and around your food. We cannot change any behavior if we do not have the awareness or the courage actually as well, or the curiosity about what's going on with ourselves. You wouldn't even be reaching out or probably listening to this podcast, you wouldn't be listening to this podcast or asking for support if you didn't know that something was going on, right? So I know that you girls are aware that something is happening, but we need to figure out, okay, well, I know I'm aware that something's happening, but I'm going to get curious more, and I'm going to actually figure out what thoughts I'm having. Write them down on a piece of paper. I did this with a client the other day. I said, let's just make 2 lists. Let's just write down about, okay, what I am struggling with, but what I love about my body at the same time, and see the differences between the two, right? There's going to be huge discrepancies between why you feel discomfort in your body, but equally why you love your body. And so many people were shocked by that because they realize the list is usually even, or they actually love their body more than what they were leading on or thinking about, but it's the negative thoughts that actually just constantly tick over in our head, right? So it's really about controlling those positive thoughts a little bit more, trying to decrease those negative ones. So first of all, being aware without judgment, and then also having curiosity over your control. Then we want to start reconnecting to our hunger and fullness cues. So we can start doing things like, okay, after I have a meal, how do I feel right now? What else am I craving? Because usually if we're craving something sweet, maybe we haven't satisfied ourselves enough with that meal. Maybe we haven't eaten enough, or potentially maybe we're just craving something sweet, and we never know these days because we have ignored our hunger cues for so bloody long that it is so hard for us to recognize when we are hungry, what we should be eating, how much we should be eating, because we don't care anymore. We simply are just trying to eat to ensure that we look a certain way, and this is what's going on with distorted eating, right? This is how we end up where we are. Reconnect with your hunger, fullness cues. This is going to take a while. It's not as easy as you think, transferring straight into intuitive eating. It took me so long, and even now I track my food sometimes just to make sure that I'm eating enough, because it is very, very easy to fall and slip back into the habit of, I'm not hungry, so I'm not going to eat. But when you're training and you need to keep up with protein and you need to keep up with calories to ensure that you're actually going to change body composition goals and stuff, personally for myself, I know that I need to eat an X amount to ensure that I see those changes. But sometimes if I'm sitting at home all day, I'm just simply not hungry. So again, sometimes I do have to go against my hunger cues to ensure that I'm eating enough. So as you can see, intuitive eating has a huge spectrum and scale of where intuitive eating lies and how it should be used and when you should be using it. But I truly believe if you are trying to heal from distorted eating, moving through into intuitive eating is going to be one of the best things that you ever do in your healing and relationship with your food. And we need to start looking at the positives and have compassion around our nutrition, what we should be eating, how much we should be eating, the education around nutrition, so you start to feel safe and comfortable with the food you are consuming. There is no way that we are going to get out of distorted eating if you cannot feel safe in the amount of food that you are consuming, because I can guarantee that you will start to slip away again as soon as you don't have support, because you feel safer without eating food, right? You feel safer with restricting the amount of calories you do have. So it is about building safety in the fact that you are not going to gain weight and you are going to be lovable no matter what you eat. That's why I find it really, really critical for people who are struggling with negative self-thoughts and distorted eating behaviors and body checking behaviors, all of these things, that they find the support that they actually need, because everyone is going to fall into these behaviors for something different, a different reason, a way that they grew up, how their family talked to them, social media, their workplace, their environment, so many things, right? And getting the right support is going to be absolutely crucial in your healing journey. I think I'm going to wrap it up there because I feel like I've covered so much in distorted eating, and I just wanted you guys to more or less be aware of the facts and how disordered eating can present. Because again, when I first was struggling with it, I didn't know it was a thing. I thought you either had an eating disorder or you didn't, but there is an in-between and there's a middle. That this is where I'm trying to catch females like you who are listening to this podcast that have those constant thoughts in your head that happens every single day that can be so exhausting and so draining and you just want out of it. That's what I'm here for. That's what Nourish Her is here for. And I just want to wrap up. I have a lot of spare time in the next 2 weeks because I, for once, don't have any events on, which is absolutely incredible. I have opened up 10 spaces for SOS coaching sessions. So instead of locking you into a container like I usually do with all of my coaching things, this is just a quick 45-minute call for $97, which is going to take you through everything that you need to start healing your relationship with food, or potentially whatever issue or whatever position you feel stuck in with your health and fitness journey. We can go through that in 45 minutes. It will also allow you to have 48 hours afterwards to ask me any more questions or continually bring up something that you want to work through for the next 48 hours, and then anything extra that I think you might need as well, whether that is just a food plan, meal support, a training program, or potentially just helping you with a routine or some behavioral habits that you would like to start as well. So you get so much out of this 45 minutes for only $97. Like I said, this will only be available for the next 2 weeks. I think the last day is on the 13th of July. So if you would like to jump in for one of those 45-minute sessions, just DM me SOS or comment on the YouTube down below SOS as well, and we'll get you booked in for a session. But I hope that you guys learned something from today's session. I feel like it was really needed just for me to vent and get out how distorted eating could feel, what some of the behaviors that could be presenting for you, and not to self-diagnose you with anything at all. And again, you can message me, you can talk to me whether you think you might have some form of distorted eating, but again, you don't even need to actually name it as anything. But I just want you to be aware that you don't have to feel this way, and it's actually not really normal to feel that way about food either, and these are the things that we will work through in Nourish Her if you were to come and work with us as well. But anyway, I'm gonna love and leave you. I will talk to you guys very soon. Hopefully I don't leave it so long till next time. I'll hopefully just be back next week. So much love. Bye.